Hi everyone, this is Ashley with CT Nina Digitals. I'm going to do a tutorial using the spring floral backdrops from my Etsy shop. I already have the images open that I'm going to use. I'm just going to jump into it and get started. So this image is a little bit brighter than this image is in some aspects, but I'm going to mess with that once I get my subject in there. So I'm going to go up to my quick selection tool and select subject up at the top. And once that selects, I'm just going to zoom in and use my plus and minus selection tool just to get areas that it possibly didn't do. It usually does a pretty good job. Little areas like this I will get rid of once I get her into the backdrop, because messing around with that with the quick selection tool can be tedious. Okay, I'm going to go up to edit, copy, edit, paste into my image here. I'm going to resize the subject. I'm going to click this box right up here to keep my proportions on her. The light is coming from the same way, so I don't have to mess with that at all. Okay, and the first thing I notice is that I don't want these fabrics. I don't want her dress overlapping that fabric, and I want to scoop this piece up a little bit. So I'm going to make sure that my subject is selected. I'm going to go up to filter and liquify. And I'm going to use my tool, and I'm just going to drag that up a little bit, and I'm going to drag her dress fabric down. Click OK, and now it's not interfering with that other fabric. For tutorial purposes, I'm not going to do it right now, but if I was delivering this to the client, I would probably use my color change action to change her dress to like a cream color instead of the gray. But this is just for the edit, so I'm just going to do that for now. So she's a little bit, her highlights are a little bit more blown out on her than on the backdrop. I'm just going to go up to my adjustments and my curves layer. And I'm going to bring down, oops, sorry, click this right here to create that clipping mask, so it's just on her. And bring that down just a little, and that looks a lot better. Mess around with that. Okay, so I'm going to create a layer mask on my subject, and I'm going to zoom in, use my black brush at 100% opacity, and I'm going to brush off the areas that you can't even really tell a difference because it was just the white that was there. I'm going to clean up the edges. I would spend a lot more time on this, but for the tutorial I'm just going to do a quick run through. Like these edges, you would want to clean up all of these edges. The blur tool might be able to just get rid of that quicker and easier for you at the end, but this looks like part of the dress, but that's actually part of the initial or the original floor, so I'm going to get rid of that. Some people like to try to keep their original shadows, but you're wanting to match the shadows from the digital backdrop. So it's better to get rid of them and then just add in all your own new shadows to match the backdrop. Helps to make it look a lot more realistic. And if there's any extra fabric you don't want in there, you can just get rid of it. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to zoom back out. And now I'm going to take my burn tool on highlights. It's on about 39%. Let me try. I'm just going to make that just a little bit darker down there. The highlights were a little bit blown out on her dress, that part of her dress. On this side, a little bit too. Okay, now I'm going to add the shadows on the floor. I'm going to click on the background, make a new layer, multiply blending mode. I'm going to take a brush at, I'm just going to start at 100% opacity, and then I'm going to lower the opacity on the layer if I need to. I'm going to grab, hold down Alt and select, make sure your brush is selected, hold down Alt, and I'm going to click a dark part of the backdrop. And I'm just going to paint in some shadows underneath her. I'm going to create, I do all my shadows in different layers so I can work with them individually. And this is going to be the shadow from her. I'm going to create a layer mask, black brush, come in. I did a little bit more than I wanted to right there, because the light is still coming in from behind her, so you're still gonna want a light on that part of the backdrop because the light's coming from over here. If it were coming from in front of her, then you would put some shadow back there. And I'm gonna lower the opacity on that layer. I'm gonna take some more off of that because she's a thin girl. Okay, and then I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to create a layer mask on this one. And I'm going to paint off some of that. Okay, I'm going to create another layer, multiply blending mode. This one is going to be very small, thin shadow right around the bottom of her dress. Now, where the light's coming, you're not going to want to really add shadow right there because that's where the light's falling. It's not going to create a shadow under that fabric. Oops, I didn't want to get rid of all that. I thought I lifted my mouse up on that last one. And I will be lowering the opacity on this one as well, can already tell. Lower my opacity. Add another layer, multiply, make it a little bit bigger, and I'm going to make it about 30% opacity. I'm going to come in and I'm going to brush a little bit more in these areas. Lower the opacity. Okay, and I'm going to click on her, my subject. And actually I'm going to add blur to the backdrop first. So she's pulled away from the backdrop. So the backdrop is not, a lot of people, a mistake they make when they do digital backdrops is they do not blur the backdrop. You're going to have depth of field to make this look realistic. So you subject more obviously in focus than your backdrop. I'm going to go duplicate my background layer. I'm going to go up to filter and blur, Gaussian blur, probably about 3. That looks good. You can play around with it if you want to add more blur depending on which lens you want it to look like you shot it with, etc. I'm just going to do 3, and then I'm going to create a layer mask on my background, and I'm going to go up to my black brush at 100% opacity, and I'm just going to brush it off of the plane that she's standing on, because that would not be blurred. Okay, and then I'm going to go up to her, and I don't always do this. It's up to you really, but I like to blur the very edge of their body, especially if I'm being lazy and there's edges that I don't want to perfect with my brush. Oops, blur tool, that would be helpful. And then just the very, not say never, sometimes I do, but I'm not touching her hair or her face for this one. I'm just going to go around the very, very edge of her body just to help blend her into the backdrop. And I'm just pressing the space key on my keyboard before I drag to move around. Especially the bottom of the dress, it helps to blur that and blend it. If you did want to make your subject look like they were standing closer to the backdrop, you could, but then you would need to add, say I had her standing like back here by the flowers, you would need to add shadow to the backdrop as well. But since I have her kind of standing out and the light's coming from this, from the left side, the light would come right on through onto the backdrop. So I'm not going to touch that area. There's some deeper shadows in the backdrop, so I'm actually going to make sure my subject is selected. I'm going to go to my burn tool, and I'm going to select shadows, and I'm just going to come right on the side of her and just make my shadows a little bit deeper, that's all. Okay, and I'm happy with that. Like I said, I would probably change her dress to like a cream or like a gold color just to match the backdrop a little bit more. But I would probably come in here too and add a little bit more of like a feathered shadow, like right here. Let's see, create a new layer, multiply. That color is still selected. I'll do like 10% and just kind of feather that shadow a little bit more. That looks a lot better already. And then I would just, the shadows are obviously the hardest part. Take some time. Don't get frustrated. Don't get overwhelmed. Try not to. That's it. If you have any questions, I can do before and after here. Before, after. If you have any questions, you can message me on Etsy if you're a studio maternity photographer. I do have a group on Facebook. It is linked in the description.